Amelia here from Sybil's Lab of Cartomantics, and I am here solo today with a video about burnout. Um, if you are anything like me, or maybe you're nothing like me, but if you're anything like me, I experience like seasons and cycles of burnout. I usually go through periods of burnout about twice a year, if not sometimes up to 3 or 4 times a year, depending on what's going on. This is just a pretty regular part of life at this point, and I know to expect it. I have been working in, what I consider helping professions. So I've been a teacher for many, many years, as well as, parenting can cause some burnout, and just like living in the world. You don't have to be in a really demanding profession or have kids to experience burnout. Just sometimes existing in the world, especially in this moment in time, can lead to different types of burnout. But at this point, I've just kind of come to expect it and try not to fight it. And one of the things that I have realized over the years and really worked hard at creating some systems and structure around is using tarot as a tool to help me through cycles of burnout. Side note and caveat, couple things. One, I am not a mental health professional, so take everything I say with a grain of salt. These are just things that I have found, for me personally, really help. I also have ADHD, so there are some of these things that are like coded for ADHD burnout as well. And also have structure can send me running to the hills, especially when I'm burnt out, whether it be like ADHD related burnout or just living the life related burnout. And so the structures that I put in place for myself are very loose, like very, very loose. And they're also there to help with things like decision fatigue and overwhelm and like overstimulation and all of that stuff. But I do still think some of this might be helpful even if you don't have ADHD, and just generally helping with burnout. So yeah, not a mental health professional. I do have ADHD, just things to keep in mind. I do, want to say that the practices that I'm about to share aren't a replacement for mental health care. If you have access to that, I really encourage you to, seek some professional help. But these can work really well in tandem with other types of supports that you're putting in place for yourself. And I've even talked to my therapist about them, and she loves them. So, take that for what you will. Okay, so back to burnout. I experience kind of like several phases of burnout. And the first phase of burnout that I experience is like zombie phase. I mean, this is when I realize that I have been going so much and I've been having to like use my executive function beyond my capacity levels so much that anytime I have a moment to sit down, it is like total brain fog. I cannot think straight. I can't make choices. I can't, like the idea of reading tarot, sometimes even like reading a book sounds really challenging and overwhelming because I, don't even know what a cup is, let alone how to interpret that in a reading. This is when you are just like completely kaput. And I notice in myself that I engage in certain patterns of behavior that are at best just like not helpful at all. At worst, sometimes make the burnout even worse. One of those is mindless scrolling. I know we all do it sometimes. If you don't, please share your secrets with me because I would love to know how you avoid the mindless scroll. But I know that in particular is really not good when I am in burnout and only makes it worse and only perpetuates the problem. And so I have tried to kind of work tarot in, not necessarily as a replacement for mindless scrolling, but just as a practice that gives me a little bit of life. And so one of the things I want to point out is some of the understanding that I've come to have around burnout. It comes from this book. It's called Burnout, The Secret to Unlocking the Stress Cycle. It's by Emily Nagoski and Amelia Nagoski. They are sisters. One, I believe it's Emily, is a mental health professional, and Amelia is a writer. And so they kind of like joined forces to talk to us about burnout and some of the science behind it. And this first phase of like zombie phase burnout is what I want to be talking about today, and how I use tarot when I'm in that zombie phase. And it actually relates kind of directly to this first chapter in this book called Completing the Cycle. And kind of what they posit is that, stress works in a cycle. And in order for your body to get the cue that the like danger, even if it is like the person that cut you off while you were driving to work that day, that in order for our body to register that that danger is no longer present and we can get out of that fight, flight, or freeze mode, we have to complete that stress cycle. There are several different ways that they talk about completing the stress cycle. One of those is exercise, which I try to do, but I'm not so great at, especially when I'm burnt out. It's because I'm doing so much, and it's like the idea of getting out of the house to go exercise feels daunting. But another thing that they talk about completing the stress cycle is creativity and storytelling. And as soon as I read that, I was like, oh my God, that's tarot. So let me explore how I can use tarot and storytelling with tarot as a way to complete that stress cycle, so that I can then do more like investigative and deep work with it. So yes, phase 1 is zombie phase. And in zombie phase of burnout, there is no way, shape, or form that I can sit down with a tarot deck, lay out some cards, and investigate my burnout. So, for example, I'm like coming into a cycle of burnout right now, and I am feeling very overwhelmed. There's a lot going on. I've got a huge mental load right now. I've got a big emotional load right now, as well as like just the doings of everyday life. And I know that something is kind of underneath all of this burnout, and that there's something going on here. I cannot identify it just with regular reflection, but I also will lay out cards to try to read about it and just get some kind of an understanding. And it's like crickets up there. There's just, I cannot look at cards and even see anything. So that tells me at the very least that like I've got kind of these open stress cycles in my body right now, and that I can't even I can't even fathom doing that work of figuring out what's causing this burnout and what I can do about it until I complete those stress cycles and get myself back into a state of stasis. So this first, I guess I'll do maybe a series about this. Let me know in the comments if you want to see more about how I deal with the other phases of burnout and use tarot as a tool for those phases. But this video, at the very least, is going to be about getting through that first like phase of needing to complete the stress cycles, because my body is just in this state of fight, flight, or freeze. So let's talk about it. And I also do want to mention that if you are in such a like moment of burnout that the idea of even picking up a tarot deck just does not sound like it would be helpful, like don't force yourself. This is if you want to use tarot as a tool and feel like this isn't going to be overwhelming for you. And like I said, I have kind of built this system very loosely, and this plan very, very loosely, so that it doesn't require a lot of effort and it doesn't require a lot of thinking, especially because I know sometimes like decision fatigue can feel like a lot. But anyway, if you don't want to like pick up a deck at all, like don't force yourself to. There's no shame in saying, you know what, this month is not going to be a month for me to read tarot because I've got too much going on. Okay, so one of the big things that helps me in using tarot when I'm in a period of burnout is simplifying, like big time simplification. So if you are anything like me, you have a lot of decks because it's fun. I've been reading for over 15 years now, so things I've acquired over the years. And sometimes just the idea of going like, okay, I want to work with tarot, let me go get a deck. And I get completely lost just trying to figure out, okay, which deck do I work with? So what I do is I will pull out, very rarely one, usually around 5 decks to work with and make them really, really accessible. So like everything else goes up on the shelves, behind the doors, in the cabinet, and I don't have to think about them or look at them. And these 5 are the ones that will like travel around with me in a basket, or, if you have a shoebox, throw them in a shoebox, or keep them, in your purse or by your bedside table, or whatever is really accessible to you, especially in those moments when you have a few minutes and doing some tarot work would really be helpful. So that's like kind of my first like stop is, okay, let's simplify and let's make tarot really accessible so that it's what I reach for when I have a moment. And I can notice myself engaging in some of these behaviors that are not helping me with burnout and are making it worse. So as far as this is concerned, I like to pick around 5 decks, and I keep them kind of into categories so that like picking my 5 decks doesn't feel like this big overwhelming thing. Sometimes it is just naturally like, oh, I'm really liking these. So these are the ones that I'm just going to keep around me, and I'm not going to feel bad that the rest are sitting on the shelf for now. But sometimes I need some categories to help me go, okay, what kind of decks do I want? So I'll share with you my 5 categories that I like to work with, and some decks that I am right now even working with within these categories, because they are helping me through this current phase of burnout. So the first category is like the Sweatpants category. So this is a deck that feels really comfortable. It doesn't require a lot of work. It doesn't require a lot of thought. The system is easy. It's a deck that I know really well. Like maybe it's been around for a while, in my collection or in your collection if you want to follow along with these categories. And right now, my Sweatpants deck is the Druidcraft Tarot. This is a really old deck. It's been around, I say really old. This deck has been around for a while though. Long enough, and it's so familiar. I knew this deck really well even before I had this deck because I just saw it a whole bunch. Either other people talking about it, or I would see it on the eclectic forums, if you remember those back in the day. And yeah, it's pretty Rider-Waite-Smith. I mean, it goes into some more like Celtic, not mythology, but Celtic kind of ideology, old Celtic ideology and stuff like that. But you don't have to read it that way, and you don't have to like include that in your work with this deck. It also so this is another kind of side thing, is that right now the one book that I'm able to read is the 3rd book in the Outlander series. I love Outlander. And I've been enjoying reading the books. And they're really comforting right now because I know the series really well, like the TV series. And so the books don't feel like a lot of heavy lifting for me in this moment. And this deck also kind of feels like it's in line with that, Scottish. In book 3, at least, we're still in Scotland. So it feels like it fits really well in that world. And there's just something really comforting about these 2 things matching up. So yes, this is a Sweatpants deck. Sometimes my Sweatpants deck is like the Tarot de St. Croix. I've talked about that deck a lot. Sometimes it's just the Rider-Waite-Smith or like the Morgan Greer or something like that. Okay, so the second category is a hug deck or a comfort deck. And the hug deck, comforting deck that I'm working with right now is new, and that's the Hedge Witch Tarot. So normally I wouldn't pull out something super duper new, especially as I'm working, with something comforting. You want something that you kind of know well. But this one just feels familiar. There's something about this deck that feels like I've been here before. And it's just, I love the colors, and it's sweet. It's a sweet deck. Even the more challenging cards don't feel overwhelming when I look at them. And there's a lot to look at and rest my eyes on. Sometimes something like this can be too much because it's really busy, but right now this doesn't feel busy, and it also feels appropriate to this season. So right now I'm filming this, it is very late September, and I'm in the northern hemisphere, so that means it's fall. We're coming into the fall season, and this is coded for all of that fall coziness. I know it's seasonal across the whole year if you're familiar with this deck. Each suit is a different season, but there's just something about this deck that feels like the comfort of fall. And so to me, this feels like a big old hug. Just, it's sweet, it's nice. The guidebook is really nice, although frankly right now I can't even read a guidebook, so I'm just with the images. And see, even here, the Five of Swords, it doesn't feel hopeless, the way some of the more challenging cards can feel. I love the crone as the High Priestess. It's beautiful. So anyway, yeah, this is my hug deck, or my comfort deck. And of course, we end on the Tower to talk about hug decks, but, well, there you go. Okay, my next category is my, feelings deck. So this is the deck that really helps me feel seen in some of my more challenging feelings. And right now, that is the Rain Shadow Tarot. I wouldn't necessarily call this deck particularly shadowy, but for whatever reason it is not afraid to get down with me in the the muck of life, and so this has been really helping me feel seen in some of these more challenging feelings that I'm having. This is also kind of newer to me. I got this for my birthday this year, and I have been exploring it a lot, but it also, I don't know, some of these cards just, they almost bring me to tears because of how much I feel validated by them in this moment in time. And so that's the third category, which is the deck, the feelings deck, the deck that makes you feel seen, the deck that validates how you're feeling, and particularly with those challenging feelings that can be kind of difficult to navigate and you're not quite sure what to do with. I love this strength card. Okay, so the fourth category is the fun deck. So this is a deck that scratches a creative itch for me, whether that be it feels really storied and rich, or it feels it kind of feels like sunshine, or it doesn't always have to be a bright and colorful deck, but for me, at least right now, the deck that feels fun, that scratches a creative itch, that feels playful, for a lack of a better word, and there's no pun intended here, is the Playful Heart Tarot. This one has been around for a while. I love Zara at Kitten Chops. I love her work. I especially love what she's done with this deck, so I have all of the expansion pack too. But I usually just work with the tarot, and I love what she's done here. It doesn't sugarcoat the challenge, but it also still feels, I don't know, it just feels good. It feels bright. It feels bubbly. It feels, it feels like a creative act just even looking at these cards, let alone working with them and reading them. Yeah, so, this category is really specific to me because sorry, knocked the camera there. I really, creative work is a huge part of not even just tarot for me, but a part of my life. I teach theater. I'm also a painter. I play musical instruments. I sing. Like, my life is infused with creativity, and it can be really hard to pick up the paintbrush or to do any kind of creative work outside of my work that I get paid for, or even creative exploration, because I'm just so burnt out. And so having a deck that feels like it scratches that itch for me is so important and so helpful, because I feel like it's like if I can't paint, then the next best thing is working with a deck that makes me feel like I'm painting a picture. And this deck comes out frequently for this category. But there are some others as well. This is just what's really calling my name at the moment. It feels irreverent. And that's a little bit what I need in the moment for my creativity. Okay. And the final category is kind of the wild card category. Let me put this over here. This is a deck that just scratches an itch. And sometimes that itch can be different depending on what's going on. So either it could be I really want something that feels intellectually stimulating, or it can be something that feels like it's so on the nose with the season, especially right now we're coming up on Halloween season. It can also be a deck that maybe is new and I just want to be around it and I want to find out more about it, but I'm not sure how, and it feels kind of overwhelming at the moment. So this is just that kind of unknown category, and these decks usually make themselves really obvious, for me at least. So the deck in this category that is right now for me is the Bohemian Gothic Tarot, because of Halloween, because it's Halloween and I want to work with something that feels like Halloween, that feels like, a fun time of year for me. I love Halloween. And this deck is kind of intimidating to me, not because it's difficult to read or anything. It just is it's so pretty, and it's got all the foiling, and I've talked about this in a previous video that this deck feels so fussy, and I'm I don't know if I can use it. So right now I'm using it with my burnout practices, as a way to kind of softly introduce myself to it and work with it. And 'tis the season, right? And this deck is also there's some irreverence here. There's also some really deep and shadowy aspects to this deck. So it kind of fits multiple categories as far as mood is concerned. But yeah, I love him. I love the Seven of Wands. This is my Deacon card, my decking card, and as a Leo, I can't remember which decan I'm in specifically. I'd have to see the wheel. But this is my Deacon card or decking card, and I'm curious to know what the Seven of Wands does, and I love him. Poor guy. So yeah, fifth category, something that scratches an itch, whatever itch that itch is for you at that moment. It just scratches your brain in all the right ways, Okay, so that is the first thing I do is I simplify the decks that I have available to me, and I make them super accessible. So right now, for example, I have the Hedge Witch Tarot as well as the Rain Shadow Tarot by my bed for specific types of practices. And then I have the Playful Heart Tarot as well as the Druid Craft by my desk where I work. So, sometimes it's a matter of keeping them all together. Sometimes it's just toting them around with you. Sometimes it asks you to, put them in specific areas that make sense for different types of work and support. But you best. So if you want to do something like this, start by throwing them all in a bag or a box or something, and then start observing when and where and how you use these decks. Okay. So the next thing that I do is I release the pressure. I tell myself that if I am in a spot where I really cannot read tarot, like it's just not going to happen, then I say that's fine. I don't have to read tarot in order for tarot to be helpful. And I completely throw out the idea of readings out the window. I don't worry about knowledge. I don't worry about learning. I don't worry about needing to understand everything. And I use tarot in a completely different way. Shoot, sometimes I don't even journal because, frankly, writing down thoughts as they relate to something outside of me feels like it's just too many steps that I have to think through. So, I simplify my decks and I completely let go of any and all pressure to work with them in a specific way. And then I have a few practices that help me through this. So the first practice that I have is to look at decks, just flip through them and sort through a deck and divide it into categories. So for example, last night I had the Bohemian Gothic out and I just flipped through this deck and I put cards into 3 piles. I put them into a pile of cards that I love. I put them into a pile of cards that I don't love. And I put them into a pile of cards that I don't understand. Kind of confused by that. Not sure what that's supposed to be going on or what's supposed to be going on there or what that has to do with, the Hierophant or whatever. And I just did that. I just looked at each card and I just sorted through it and put it in my different piles. And frankly, you can do this. So I'll even do this with decks that I've had for years because my relationship to different cards has changed over the years. And so sometimes it's just interesting to see how that has changed. But yeah, that's it. That's all I do. And this is I'm looking at cards, I'm engaging with the imagery, I'm thinking about how I feel about this imagery, what it brings up for me, and I just sort them into categories. Love that, don't love that, not sure what I think about that. And that's it. And that can take 10 minutes, 5 minutes, 15 minutes. It doesn't have to take that much time at all. But it's you're relaxing your body and you are focusing on one thing that is sitting in front of you and your brain isn't bouncing around all over the place, right? And it's you're communicating to your body right now in this moment you are safe and look at these pretty pictures. And I'll do this, several times a week. Maybe not every day because I have other things that I like to do with cards, but this is something that I'll do a few times a week, and I'll do them with each of these decks as many times as I want to. There's kind of no end goal. It's just I'm sitting down, I have 15 minutes, let me pick up this deck and sort it into piles. And sometimes I'll make different categories if I feel up to that, if my capacity feels like it can handle coming up with some different categories. So for example, you could sort the deck into cards that make you feel different ways. So this card makes me feel happy. This card makes me feel anxious. This card makes me feel sad. Or, this card is a good, the cards that are a good reflection of how I feel when I'm sad or a good reflection of how I feel when I'm anxious. And especially creating categories around feelings can help you kind of process through different feelings that you're experiencing in burnout. Because I know for me, at least when I'm in the midst of burnout, feelings can feel like they're all just mushed together, and it can be hard to separate them out and really understand them. And so just using tarot as a tool to help me separate my feelings, my brain then can have enough space around them to really start to process some of them and understand them. So that is practice number 1, which is just very simply getting a deck out and creating, 2 to 3 categories, some, 4 if you're feeling fancy, but 3 is a good number, and just sorting it out into 3 different categories. And I'll put some of the categories that I suggested down below, as well as a few others if you're like totally at a loss and you're like, I don't even know what a category is, because I've been there. And again, this is why I have all of this in place for myself, so that like I don't have to think about it. When I am in that zombie state, I don't have to even think about, okay, what am I going to do with tarot to help me? Like, I've already done this work and I've already kind of laid out these ideas, so that all I have to do is just like go grab one and run with it. Okay, so the second practice that I will engage in is what I like to call like tarot building blocks. And so I talked in our Tarot 101 video kind of about a little bit about building blocks. And this is a little bit different from that. So I'm not even talking about like the building blocks of tarot in terms of like tarot symbolism. So like pentacles and what they mean, and the white rose on the Fool card and that sort of stuff. What I'm talking about are just visual building blocks of what you see. So here's an example. I will lay out 3 cards, and I will look for patterns of color. So I see yellow. See, here's some yellow here in this card. Here's some yellow up here in this like sunflower umbrella. And here's some yellow kind of behind our figure here in the Two of Wands, and just like generally yellowishness. Or I'll look for cards that are colors that stand out. So like this pink, this hot pink here in the middle, this stands out, and I don't see that anywhere else in these cards. And that's it. Like, I don't push it beyond that. So I'll look for, like as far as like visual building blocks, I'll look for colors, especially in a deck like this that is just so colorful. I'll look for shapes. So like maybe sometimes you can see like, the circles that are repeated in kind of circular shapes in here, and there aren't really any circular shapes in here, so this feels like a break over here, and like that's it. That's, so I'll look for colors, I'll look for shapes, I'll look for repeated imagery or like symbols, like small things. So actually I'm seeing like a lot of blue over here, and then she feels like she stands out. But, for example, if like there were a tree that got repeated across the different cards, or I do notice like, so these are both really dark and like kind of have grays and blues. This is super colorful, and it's got like plant life, right? So I notice that. And if my brain is feeling up to it, I will go beyond, and I will just simply ask myself the question, how does that make me feel? Like, how does it make me feel that these 2 cards are really kind of dark, dull over here, and this one is so bright and feels like it's full of life? Like, how do I feel about that? And it's like, man, I kind of feel like I'm like journeying through the darkness and like coming out in the light on the other side. And like, this feels so joyful and exuberant. And it feels like I really have to like kind of journey through this drab to get to this, right? And that's it. I don't even force myself to write it down. If I'm feeling up to it, I might. But I just simply ask myself, how do I feel? So looking for repetitions of color or like patterns of color. So these are really warm toned over here. There's like yellow in her dress. There's yellow up here in this card. And this is so cool. And like, but it's not kind of dark and drab the way these 2 were. This is like refreshingly cool. And I'll just kind of work with that. And again, it's really not even interpreting. It's just noticing things. And again, kind of like categorizing your decks does. What this does for me is it just forces me to like sit down and pause for 5 minutes, but not in a way that asks me to do a lot of work and a lot of thinking and a lot of, a lot of things that my brain just really cannot do at that moment. But it forces me to sit down. It forces me to notice things. So there's some like presence and mindfulness going on here. And then if I'm able to, it like gets me thinking about my feelings, right? And the reactions that I have to these cards. So that's my second practice, is I will lay out usually 3 cards, and I will just look for the like visual building blocks that I see either repeated or that stand out. And if I'm feeling like I'm able to, I'll just ask myself, how do I feel about that? And then I'll respond. And if I can, I write it down. And if I can't, I don't worry about it. And then I put the deck away, and like that's the end of that. And then I get up and I go do the 50,000 other things that I need to be doing right now. But even that alone is so much better for my brain than scrolling on my phone or eating half a bag of potato chips, because I am not immune to like stress eating either. And my third practice is to pull out a deck, and I think I'm gonna do the Druidcraft for this. And if I'm in a spot where I can really, like, my feelings are so on the surface and they are so kind of like overwhelming, right? And maybe I can identify them and talk about them. Maybe I can't. Maybe it's just like I am feeling a lot. Is I will come to a deck and I will look for the cards that feel a little bit like a balm or like an antidote to those feelings. And maybe antidote isn't the right word, because like, have your feelings, right? We all need to have our feelings, but these are the cards that just feel like the hug that you need, like the cool drink of water or the cup of tea or whatever it is. Sometimes there even is a cup of tea involved if I have the time. But yeah, so I might pull out cards that feel like what I need in this moment. And I don't think about, okay, well, this is the Ace of Swords. It means this. I just look at the cards. Like, look at this hand reaching out from the water, holding a sword that feels so like triumphant, and I want to feel triumphant right now. I want to feel as ready as this image is making me feel. I want to feel like I am ready to like take charge. And so I'll just put that there, right? This 4 of Cups, like, oh man, it would be so nice to just be laying in a tree looking at some cups right now. That would feel really nice. So I'll just do that. And, maybe I go through the whole deck. Maybe I go until, it just feels right. Again, I don't force it. Oh, I want to be hanging out with her right now. I don't force it. I don't, create a lot of this where the ADHD comes in. If I force myself to sit through this whole deck, and if I'm not feeling like it, then the like whole exercise is wasted. Because I don't like limitations, and I don't like being forced to do something I don't want to do. So I'll just go until it feels right, until I feel like, oh, I want to be there too, until I feel like I have what I need. So yeah, actually, I'm feeling good about the like 4 that I drew. So I'll pull out cards that feel like what I need in this moment. And I don't have to, sorry, I hit the camera again. I don't have to have like a good reason for that. I don't have to justify it or explain it to myself. It's just, I look at that and I go, yes, that feels nice. And I'll just lay them out and I'll just look at them. And again, if I'm feeling up to it, I might journal about it. I might write about how, like, wouldn't it be so nice to just be laying in a tree right now and to have like the cups around me, or I'll, write out like what I was saying here about the Ace of Swords. Like, this just feels so triumphant and I could use a win right now. It really feels like I could use this type of energy. Or, the lady is just like, she looks like she's got her stuff together and I really don't feel like I have my stuff together. I would love to like share words of wisdom with her and get some advice from her. Like, she feels like the person that I need to talk to right now. Or, wouldn't it be nice if I could experience the harmony that I see in this 10 of Pentacles? That would just be so, and like, that's it. Again, but if I'm not feeling, if all it takes is for me to just look at the card and recognize in some way this feels like the medicine I need right now. This feels like the balm. This feels like just a deep breath. That's good enough, right? Like, it doesn't need to be any more complicated than that. So anyway, those are just, I keep hitting this camera. I'm so sorry, guys. The, like, camera down setup is something else, let me tell you. But anyway, these are just 3 practices that I like to work with cards. Another kind of like half practice that I have is, again, just because I keep decks nearby, and so instead of reaching for my phone or eating that half a bag of potato chips, I'll reach for a deck instead, and I'll just look through it, and I'll just look at the cards, and that's it. I don't categorize them. I don't think about them. I just look at them and let my eyes rest on the imagery, and give myself a few minutes of calm and a few minutes of quiet where all I'm doing is looking at pretty pictures. And sometimes that's enough, and I emerge on the other side and I feel 10 times better, or at least just an increment better. It doesn't even have to be like a huge payoff. It can be, I feel like I can at least tackle the next task on my list. Or like at night, I will have a deck by my bed and I'll look through a deck at night, and it's like, okay, I feel like I can lay down now, or I can read my book, because I try to read a book before bed to help me fall asleep instead of the internet. So I'll look through a deck and it's like, okay, I feel like I can lay down now. I feel rested. I feel calm. And that's it. And that's all I'll do is look through a deck. So those are 3.5 practices for how I use tarot when I am in the zombie or code red phase of burnout. I hope it was helpful. If you are wanting some like outside additional support, I have a couple of readings that I offer that is specifically for this type of work on our website, which is sibylslab.com. I'll leave it linked below. But particularly for when you're in burnout, there are 2 readings that I designed specifically for that, and that is the Fill Your Cup reading, which is all about exploring your empty cup and how we can implement some gentle practices for you to start refilling that again, so you can feel better and more whole to go about your life and take care of the people and the things that need to be taken care of. The other reading is called The Eye of the Storm, and it is for those moments in life when you really don't have tons of agency. There's a lot going on that you don't have a lot of choice around, and so it's how can we find a moment for you that just feels like just a singular moment of calm in the midst of a lot of chaos. I'll include a link to my reading page as well, so you can check those out. And if you feel like you are in a space where you need that, you can book a reading with me. I offer those both live over Zoom or pre-recorded if you don't have time to sit down for a whole reading with somebody. And you can dip into that when you need to. But as we like to do here, I'm going to pull a couple of cards for us, and I'm going to pull some cards for, what is the balm if you're in a period of burnout, much like I am. Hold on, there's a card that's flipped over the wrong way. But if you're in a period of burnout like I am right now, I'm going to pull a card asking the question like, okay, did I make that up? I made that up. Okay, I'm going to pull a card asking the question like, oh no, I didn't. Let's see. I know. I'm asking the question, what do we need right now? Like, what's the balm that we need for our burnout in this moment? And we're just going to look at this together. Okay. Oh, and see that strength card. I love that strength card. Okay. So we got Strength and the Queen of Pentacles. And so already I'm seeing this circle reflected in these two cards. So there's something here about not feeling whole and feeling kind of fragmented. And I mean, I look at her in her bear cloak, and it's like the strength that we need right now is to like wrap ourselves and protect ourselves from whatever it is that is agitating or causing that burnout or becoming feeling like it's too much to handle. And we need that like warm embrace, that comfort, that hug, that feeling like we are protected and safe. Even earlier we were talking about like completing that stress cycle, getting out of fight, flight, or freeze mode. And the way we're able to do that is to make ourselves feel safe again, is to make ourselves feel like, yes, body, you are not being attacked by a predator right now. Like, you are okay in this moment. And then over here I'm seeing like, thinking about the pentacles as like this of work and of doing things. And this is feeling like such a reflective image, right? And so she's up here and she's a little bit clearer in the image, and she's kind of a little less clear, a little more faded. And it kind of feels like there is something that we need to be doing that is like falling out of practice, that isn't happening. We're letting like a part of our like muscle, our like emotional muscle fade away because we're so focused up here on all of the things that we need to be doing, right? And that's causing, going back to that fragmentation, that's causing that fragmentation. So it's like we really need to like ground ourselves, make sure our body knows that like you are safe, you are okay, and reflect on what practices, what healthy things have we let fall by the wayside because we're so focused on getting everything done that needs to be done. We're so focused on being a taskmaster, right? And what are we letting fade into the background that we really need to be giving our attention right now? Okay. Well, I hope that was helpful. I hope at least some of these practices are helpful, or you are able to get anything from it. I would also love to know down in the comments below, I'd love to know a couple things. One, do you want me to do more of these kind of chats about using tarot for burnout, and maybe talk about some of the different phases of burnout? And two, I would also love to know if you use tarot to support you through burnout. Do you have like specific practices in place like this, or do you just kind of like grab a deck and run and kind of, whatever you need in the moment it comes easily and you're able to tap into that? Thank you so much for sitting with me during this time. Until next time, friends, I'll see you in the lab. Bye.